Revenge with Karen. I was halfway through presenting our new client onboarding flow, something I'd rebuilt from duct tape and burnout into a $16 a quarter machine, when the door slammed open like a damn action movie. Monica, 6-inch heels, blood-red lipstick, holding a clipboard like it was a holy relic from the HR gods. She strutted in like she owned the oxygen and goes, per HR, "Your role has been dissolved." Then smirks, "You're fired." Effective immediately. You could feel the room exhale, like a balloon deflating in slow motion. The investor team, 6 suits from a fund that recently wired $50 million into Polaris, just froze. Their VP adjusted his tie. The associate's pen stopped mid-scribble. Even the executive assistant looked up from her iced coffee like, did she really just do that? And me? I didn't blink. I smiled. "Weird," I said, loud enough to reach every corner of the walnut-paneled conference room. "My mom's at home." It hung there for a second, just confusion dancing with disbelief, until the double doors at the back swung open again, and in walked CEO Martin Ellison, the actual owner of the Oxygen. Custom suit, silver hair, presence so heavy it made you sit straighter just to survive it. He walked straight over to me, Monica still mid-smirk, and gently placed a hand on my shoulder. "Apologies," he said to the room. "Family matter." Monica's face did something I can only describe as buttocks breaking. She turned the color of non-fat Greek yogurt. Jeff, her boyfriend and our VP of Ops, suddenly found something very interesting on the carpet pattern. The investor team just watched. You could feel them recalibrating their mental spreadsheet of who mattered in this company. Hey, if you're still listening, apparently 93% of you are without subscribing. Maybe fix that. Hit the subscribe button, give us a like, or I swear I'll let Monica run your next performance review. It helps the team more than you know. And unlike Jeff, we actually know how Excel works. Anyway, back to the implosion. Martin glanced at the clipboard in Monica's hands like it was covered in sewage, turned to the investor team with a smile like nothing had just detonated in front of them. "We'll just take a moment," he said. "Michelle will rejoin shortly." Then, to Monica, "Please step outside." It wasn't a suggestion. She blinked. Martin, I was acting on, he didn't raise his voice. Didn't even look angry, just said outside, now. And when Monica didn't move, security didn't come. Nobody got dramatic. But his tone shifted just a few degrees colder. Suddenly, everybody in that room knew what power really looked like. She turned on her heel and walked out without another word. The door clicked shut behind her like a coffin ceiling. I didn't say anything, didn't have to. Martin looked down at the clipboard she left behind, scanned a few lines, then calmly handed it to an assistant with a nod. "Shred this." Then he looked at me and smiled. Not the CEO smile, the dad's smile. "Take 5, he said. "Let's finish the demo." The investors were just starting to get impressed. Martin's hand on my shoulder wasn't just paternal, it was surgical. Like a scalpel cutting clean through 6 years of being talked over, side-eyed, and quietly erased in meeting notes by people who assumed the quiet girl in flats didn't know how to swing a hammer. His voice was soft, but the kind that could silence a courtroom. "Apologies," he said, looking directly at the investor team. Family matter. The room recalibrated itself in real time. You could see it. The investor's associate glanced at their legal pad and stopped writing. The senior partner raised an eyebrow. One of them actually leaned back like they were watching live theater. Monica, still planted beside the projector with that HR clipboard clutched like a prayer book, made a noise, kind of a hybrid between a cough and a whimper. Her skin was now the color of skim milk. Jeff, standing half a pace behind her with his VP lanyard swinging like a noose, tried to speak, but only got as far as wait. What Martin didn't look at either of them. Just leaned slightly toward me and said, "Take a moment, Michelle. You'll rejoin shortly." It wasn't a question. I nodded, stood, smoothed the hem of my jacket, and walked out without looking at Monica. I didn't need to. Her silence was loud enough to taste. As I reached the hallway, I paused, just enough to hear what followed. Martin turned to Monica, calm as ever. "You're done in this room for today." Her voice wobbled. "Martin, I was following protocol. HR approved this." "I was told," Monica, he interrupted gently, "you were told a lot of things. Some of them are about to become your problem. For now, please step outside." You'd think someone like her, brash, surgically confident, surgically enhanced, would put up more of a fight. When Martin looks at you like that, even liars forget how to lie. This isn't how she started, then stopped. Because Martin just turned to the investor, who'd begun softly chuckling into his coffee like he'd just watched a scene from Succession, and said, "We'll continue the walkthrough in a few minutes. Our operational integrity lead needs a moment." He didn't say my daughter. He didn't have to. Monica finally moved, shoes clicking like a dying metronome as she shuffled to the exit. Jeff tried to follow, but Martin held up a single finger, and it might as well have been a sword. "Jeffrey," he said without even looking at him, "you stay." I turned the corner just in time to hear the air leave Jeff's lungs. Outside the conference room, the corridor stretched empty and cold. I walked until I reached the quiet alcove near the west stairwell, my old hiding spot when I needed a moment to not scream into a wall. I sat, checked my phone. 3 Slack messages from Jeff, 2 unread emails from legal, 1 breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I let it out slow. This wasn't how I wanted it to go. I never planned to drop the family bomb. I was proud that nobody here knew I was Martin's daughter. I'd built onboarding from rubble with no last name privilege, no one pulling strings. Monica just had to flex in front of the investor team like she was auditioning for a Bravo show called Real Executives of Narcissism County. Well, she flexed. And now the tendons were snapping. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Martin, "Come to my office." "Now." "Use the private elevator." I stood, straightened my jacket, and smiled. Not because I was happy, not because I won, because I was finally done playing nice. The private elevator still smelled like cedar and old money. It skipped the floors everyone else had to crawl through and delivered me straight to the executive suite, glass, marble, and a soundproof door labeled Private Conference A. I'd only been up here twice before. Once during orientation when I got lost, and once when my father had emergency heart surgery and needed me to quietly sign something on his behalf. No titles, no cameras, just trust. As the door slid open, I wasn't Michelle L. from Ops anymore. I was Michelle Caro, and I had receipts. 6 years ago, I took a quiet job in onboarding at Polaris Group under my mother's maiden name. Not some corporate Game of Thrones thing, just necessity. Martin had earned everything on his own, built the company from a glorified filing cabinet into a multi-sector tech empire. When I told him I wanted in, he said, "Only if you're better than everyone in the room, and only if they never know you're mine." Fair enough. So I started as Michelle Caro, no LinkedIn fanfare, no bragging. Just built the onboarding vertical into the highest margin arm of the company while people like Jeff got drunk on power and bathroom mirror pep talks. I made it easy for them to underestimate me. Kept my head down, used Post-its instead of Slack drama, let other people take credit when it didn't cost me. I didn't need credit. I needed leverage. Then Monica came. She was like if a martini had a LinkedIn profile, all sharp edges and impossible confidence. She started in legal, got fast-tracked through a compliance rotation, and latched onto Jeff like a social climbing tick with press-on nails. I'll never forget what she said in the break room one day when she thought I wasn't listening. "I'll marry into this company. Untouchable." That's when I stopped keeping my head down. At first, it was just screenshots, expense reports, late-night edits to payroll data. Monica was sloppy, and Jeff was worse. Their consulting firm approvals had signatures that looked suspiciously identical. They hosted vendor dinners at restaurants where Monica's cousin worked the bar. I wasn't even looking for dirt. The dirt walked into my inbox wearing glitter and heels. Still, I didn't want to burn it all down. Not yet. My plan was slow: build the file, tighten the leash, and let them hang themselves when the timing was right. I kept everything off company devices, had a burner Gmail, a locked USB, and physical copies stashed behind the false bottom of my filing cabinet drawer, just in case. And then Monica started targeting my team. It wasn't random. She wanted my headcount. She wanted my software budget. She started reallocating resources mid-quarter, cutting projects to make them look like failures. I had a junior analyst break down in the hallway after being screamed at by Monica for approving without clearance on something I had explicitly signed off. That's when I knew this wasn't just power games. It was sabotage. I filed 2 formal internal concerns, neatly ignored, so I stopped going through proper channels. I started compiling the red file, every doctored invoice, every Slack message, every calendar invite for off-site strategy sessions that were thinly veiled hookup getaways. I even found a Venmo payment from Jeff to one of the shell vendors labeled "Thanks for covering." The thing is, I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want a promotion. I just wanted my work to matter. And for once, I wanted these two smug, posturing narcissists to feel what it's like to build something, actually build something, instead of hijacking it mid-flight and slapping their names on the wings. But after today, after Monica tried to gut me in front of the investor, after she weaponized HR to stage a public execution with no warning, yeah, now it's personal, because she didn't just insult me. She insulted what I built. She dragged my people down with her, thinking the spotlight would protect her. And worst of all, she forgot the one rule that still matters in business. Don't screw over someone who knows where the bodies are buried, and signed half the death certificates herself. Martin was waiting inside the suite, standing beside a table with one item on it, a sealed folder labeled Crownbrook, internal for board only. He tapped it once. Is this what I think it is? I nodded. Then it's time, he said. You've done the work. Let's show them what legacy looks like. Walking back into the bullpen felt like stepping into the eye of a hurricane that hadn't realized it already died. Everyone looked busy, keyboards clicking, spreadsheets open, but nothing was moving. Conversations hung unfinished. Coffee sat untouched, and every single person had one ear tuned to my footsteps. I passed my old project board, half erased, still taped with color-coded notes, sat at my desk like I hadn't just detonated half the hierarchy of Polaris in under 30 minutes. No one said a word. Not the intern 2 seats down who used to ask me about fonts. Not the product manager who once drunkenly admitted he used my documentation as templates because it just worked better. And certainly not the data lead whose transfer request Monica had accidentally lost 3 times. The silence was thick, but the whispers moved like smoke. From behind monitors, over Slack threads, probably in bathroom stalls and HR inboxes already spinning with keywords like favoritism, internal escalation, and holy SHT, Michelle just kneecapped legal. I didn't care. I opened my laptop and started typing. 17 emails, all backlog. Approvals, notes, pipeline updates. Same work I'd been doing every day before someone tried to erase me with a clipboard and an ego. Ping, Slack, from Jeff S. VP Ops, you set us up, you planned this. My face didn't move, no eye roll, no smile. Just calmly dragged the message into an email to legal. Subject, potential retaliation communication compliance reference, red file #14 attachment, screenshot. Then I deleted the Slack thread. Let him scream into the void. Few minutes later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, internal extension. I picked up. Michelle, hi, this is Olivia Chen, associate partner on the investment team. Her voice was cool but curious. I was in the room earlier. I was wondering if we could chat privately. I glanced around. Every eye was still pretending not to look at me. Of course, I said. Meet me in Ops Glass 3 and 5. It was the smallest of our conference rooms. Just a round table, couple of chairs, and a fake ficus that someone had dressed with seasonal tinsel. I beat her there and printed a single sheet from my USB drive, a sanitized summary of recent compliance observations. Vague enough not to trigger alarms, specific enough to hint there was much more behind the curtain. Olivia entered fast and sat even faster. We're not stupid, she said. That was a hit job, but you didn't flinch. Either you're reckless or you're sitting on something. Handed her the page. Let her read in silence. After a minute, she looked up. How long have you been collecting this? 6 months, I said. I never intended to use it unless someone forced my hand. She looked impressed. Why not escalate sooner? Because the systems are wired to protect people like Monica. She weaponizes policy like most people use parking passes. You report her, she buries it in paperwork and claims you have a tone issue. Jeff signs off her bad math because he thinks sex buys silence. Legal can't touch her because she was legal. She nodded slowly, tapping the page. This is enough to warrant concern. Will you formalize it? Yes. I'll send a full brief with linked documentation. But I want it seen by the board and your compliance lead, not routed through HR. She cracked the barest smile. Good, because I wasn't calling to warn you. I was calling to see if you'd cooperate with our diligence team. I blinked. She leaned in. We've been circling the leadership dynamics at Polaris for months. Something smelled off. The investor team is divided. Half of us think Jeff's a balloon in a suit and Monica's a liability with lipstick. But we couldn't get inside. Until now. So this is what? A probe? She stood, folding the page and slipping it into her portfolio. It's an invitation. You don't need to sync them. Just need to show what's under the waterline. I didn't smile, didn't nod. Just said, you'll have the folder by noon. She paused at the door. Why now? I looked past her. past the ficus, past the entire room of whispers still pretending their worlds weren't about to flip. Because she tried to erase me, I said, and because I'm done watching incompetent people burn down what better people built. She gave a final nod and left, and I turned back to my desk. Nobody was speaking, but everyone was watching. The first grenade landed at 9:17 the next morning. An internal memo from Jeff's office, carbon copied to finance, HR, and half of senior ops leadership, with the subject line, correction to improper project sign-offs Q2 Q3 onboarding. Spend the body was full of corporate speak soup, unauthorized authority delegation, administrative oversight, temporary revocation of budget control, but the translation was obvious. Monica and Jeff were trying to rewrite history. They wanted my approvals erased. Budgets I'd built, signed, and delivered results on suddenly marked as invalid due to unclear reporting lines. They were trying to claw back 6 months of work and toss it into the compliance shredder. And they picked the worst possible day to do it, because investor due diligence had just hit the brakes. Apparently, Olivia Chen's chat with me had sparked more than curiosity. It had triggered a freeze. I caught wind through the grapevine. Legal's paralegal let it slip over lunch to an HR temp who panic texted me that the fund had issued a temporary hold on their next phase capital release. Not a cancellation, not even a warning. Just one word, pause. Pause meant fear. Pause meant someone upstairs had seen the kind of red flag that comes gift-wrapped in audit language. Pause meant Monica was no longer allowed to sweet-talk her way through investor dinners, pretending her job title came with ethics. She tried anyway. At 10:42 a.m., a second memo dropped, this one from Monica, addressed to the same distribution list, citing material irregularities in documentation chain of command. She claimed she was rectifying ambiguities and streamlining compliance by retroactively nullifying certain onboarding approvals tied to non-executive contributors. She never used my name. She didn't need to, but finance didn't bite. I got a call from Dana in the controller's office. Her voice was gravel and caffeine, the kind of woman who'd seen more internal drama than a Bravo reunion. They really think they can ghost edit a whole budget quarter. Trying, I said. She snorted. Too bad they forgot your sign-off chain still routes through the legacy platform. That thing's like a damn tattoo. It doesn't go away just because you change your haircut. Will you honor it? Oh, honey, she said. Not only are we honoring it, we just filed a statement with audit saying we won't process reversals without written board approval. And we CC'd legal. Twice. I hung up, heart pounding, and walked straight to my locked drawer. Inside, beneath the panel, was the folder. The one Martin had already glanced at. The one I hadn't planned to submit unless it got this bad. It had gotten this bad. The cover page read, Confidential Internal Review File, Crownbrook Onboarding and Budget Discrepancies, Q1 Q3 64 pages. Timestamps. Slack exports. Expense breakdowns. Photos of receipts from vendor meetings that just happened to take place at Monica's sister's wine bar. Calendar overlaps that showed Jeff double-dipping with Shell consultants who, upon closer inspection, didn't have LinkedIn pages or actual employees. I drafted the email slowly. No drama, no threats. Just a clean, professional cover note addressed to the board audit committee. Per the committee's ongoing oversight of operational integrity and compliance posture, please find attached documentation relevant to recent claims regarding onboarding budget authority and reporting chain irregularities. Kindly note this file was prepared proactively and is provided in service of transparency and accuracy. Regards, Michelle Caro SR. Ops Program Lead Onboarding Strategy. I hit send. 5 minutes later, Monica's name was pulled from the calendar invite for the upcoming investor lunch. An assistant whispered that the board chair had requested an urgent process review of all external-facing communication approvals. And someone told me, quietly, carefully, that Monica had just been asked to stand down from all external representation until clarity is achieved. I didn't celebrate, because if I'd learned anything from my time in this company, it was this. When the powerful start to slip, they don't fall. They scramble. Desperate people with too much ego and too little accountability don't go quietly. They claw, and I could feel the claws coming. The room where it happened wasn't dramatic. No gavel, no standing ovation. Just the Monday board audit review, 9 a.m. sharp, coffee bitter, chairs too stiff, and everyone pretending they hadn't already read the folder before the meeting started. But the air had changed. Martin sat at the head, silent, letting the head of audit, Worth, walk through the document. Not read it, present it. Like evidence in a trial she already knew the verdict to. No fluff, no mercy. Page 14, Dana said, tapping the screen. Dinner at Mays and Barrel, 3 guests, $1,274 charged to discretionary operations budget. Line item marked vendor relationship dev. According to the reservation log, that dinner included Monica L., Jeff S., and Monica's cousin, Erica Lang, who, per this attachment, filed an invoice the following day as an external training consultant. No LinkedIn, no resume, no tax ID. A few of the board members stiffened. Dana kept going. She was surgical. Page 29. Approval log shows a headcount adjustment on July 12. An analyst from Michelle's team, Emily D., was removed from the project roster and replaced with a preferred contractor from an unvetted firm. Michelle's name is missing from the approval trail. She turned the page. However, here, see the Slack transcript. Monica instructs the junior analyst to just route it through Jeff. We'll fix it after the quarter closes. Someone muttered Jesus under their breath. Dana didn't stop. Page 37. Email exchange between Monica and a shell vendor. Payments routed through 3 different names, all tied back to an address registered under Jeff's cousin's mortgage. The services, soft skills development webinars, none of which exist. And then she dropped the hammer. Final page, an internal HR note, quietly submitted by an employee who since transferred to logistics. States Monica applied pressure, verbal, aggressive tone to a junior analyst, urging them to backdate an approval on a contractor invoice to avoid hitting the quarterly threshold that would trigger automatic legal review. The board chair raised his hand. Dana paused. Has legal reviewed all this? Twice, she said, and IT ran integrity checks on the files. No signs of tampering. Timestamp consistency is intact. Slack exports were subpoenaed through internal compliance tools. This is legit. Martin finally spoke. His voice was low, measured. And the financial exposure? Dana didn't blink. If investors cite this as material misrepresentation, we could be on the hook for breach of due diligence covenants, especially if Monica or Jeff presented these relationships as clean during roadshows. That's breach territory. Best case, reputation damage. Worst case, she exhaled, federal audit, maybe more. The board didn't shout, didn't scream, just sat in it, like a congregation realizing their preacher's been skimming from the basket. One of the directors, a steely woman with an ex-SEC badge on her LinkedIn, leaned forward. Who submitted this folder? And gestured subtly toward me. Michelle Caro. There was a pause. Then someone asked the question they'd all been sitting on. Isn't she? Martin cut them off. She's my daughter. Yes, but more importantly, she's the one who built the onboarding vertical from the ground up. The only reason this didn't explode sooner is because she was too damn good at keeping it running while others siphoned off the top. Silence again. Then murmurs, agreement, a few nods. And then the board chair said, been sitting on a powder keg. Dana nodded, and the match was lit 6 quarters ago. By the time the meeting ended, Monica's badge had been restricted from financial systems. Jeff's calendar was cleared by IT before he even left his office. And me, I didn't go back to my desk. I went to the printer and ran off 6 hard copies of the folder, because the fuse wasn't done burning. And the next stop, investor dinner. The steakhouse was dim, hushed, absurdly expensive, the kind of place where the salt came in 3 varieties and no one dared speak above a whisper unless their net worth had a comma and at least 2 zeros after it. Martin and I walked in side by side. Nobody clapped. This wasn't a movie. But every eye tracked us from bar to table, the same way lions watch the biggest buck walk into the clearing. I wasn't on the menu, but I was suddenly very interesting. The lead investor, Clay Foster, senior partner, suit so sharp it probably had its own NDA, stood when we approached. Martin shook his hand. Clay turned to me. You're Michelle, he said flatly. Not a question. I nodded. That's me. He gestured to the empty seat beside him. You're sitting here. It wasn't a request. I sat. The servers flowed around us like tuxedoed ghosts, pouring Pinot and sliding menus under elbows. I didn't even open mine. I wasn't hungry. Clay didn't look at the wine. Look at the menu. He looked at me. You let her fire you, he said. Martin stiffened slightly, but I raised a hand. It's fine. Clay's tone didn't change. You were calm. Silent, you looked like someone watching a toddler scribble on a check for a nuclear warhead. I tilted my head. You have a way with metaphors. He didn't blink. You're calm now, too. Would panic make you trust me more? I asked. That earned the faintest twitch of his mouth. not quite a smile, or like an internal check mark. Then he leaned in, wine untouched. Was this why you stayed quiet during your termination? I didn't pretend to misunderstand, didn't feign modesty or protest innocence. I just said, I wanted you to see how they treat people when they think no one's watching. The silence that followed was deliberate, measured, and then Clay nodded. We were watching. Around us, forks clinked. Conversation hummed. But between us, something locked into place, like a file sliding into a cabinet where it had always belonged. Clay shifted his gaze to Martin. She's sharper than you. Martin chuckled. Don't I know it? Clay returned to me. We've suspected something off with Jeff's leadership for months. We couldn't prove it. Monica covered her tracks well enough to keep us cautious. But yesterday, he tapped his temple. That was the tell. I sipped my water. You mean the part where she staged a firing in front of your team? No, he said. Part where you didn't flinch. The first course arrived, some foamy beat nonsense I barely registered. Clay ignored his plate. You know what kind of people make it through our acquisition process? He asked, voice low. Ones with good folders, I offered. He grinned barely. No, the ones who understand timing. You didn't blow the whistle. You waited until the moment had wait. That shows judgment. Which is what Monica and Jeff lacked entirely. He leaned back, finally lifting his glass. We didn't just pause diligence because of risk. We paused because we found something worth investing in that wasn't on the original term sheet. Martin cleared his throat. Careful, Clay, you're starting to sound sentimental. Clay raised his glass toward me instead. To Michelle, he said, the only person in this building who knew the difference between silence and strategy. I didn't toast back. I didn't need to, because I hadn't just survived the fallout. I'd rewritten the entire blast radius. The emergency leadership meeting wasn't scheduled. It was summoned. Calendars cleared like a fire alarm had gone off. Every director, VP, and senior legal officer crammed into the 10th floor boardroom like they were being called to answer for a crime they hadn't realized was already under prosecution. Martin walked in last. He didn't sit. He stood at the head of the table, one hand resting on a leather folder embossed with the company's logo. No prepared remarks. No PowerPoint. Just silent expectation, and every eye turning to him like a jury waiting for the judge's first breath. Across the table, Monica looked like someone who'd gotten dressed for a victory lap and stumbled into a sentencing. She was in full costume, lipstick perfect, blazer sharper than a courtroom objection. She opened with the kind of performance only delusion and panic can fuel. This entire thing has been orchestrated, she began. Michelle has personal vendettas. She's weaponized a file full of misinterpreted data and turned it into a witch hunt. She flipped open her own binder, filled with charts and emails cherry-picked to tell a story where she was merely an overwhelmed leader, blindsided by clerical confusion and back-end glitches. Look at the timing, she pressed. Minute diligence tightens. She drops this file, she baited us. She's bitter, she's always wanted more power and didn't get it. Jeff nodded like a bobblehead on caffeine. This is retaliation. Those documents, some of them aren't even accurate. I don't remember approving half of those vendor forms. I think she forged some of this. Martin held up a single finger. The room stilled. He nodded toward the director of IT, who stood with a tablet and grim expression. Conducted metadata validation on the folder files. IT began. All files originated from Michelle's company-issued laptop. All timestamps align with logged activity. No signs of fabrication. In fact, some of the documents were backed up automatically to our compliance cloud archive. He turned the tablet so legal could see. If these are forged, then the company's entire archive is too, which it isn't. You could practically hear Jeff's soul shriveling. Legal chimed in, eyes locked on Monica like a sniper watching a target move into frame. As for Monica, she said evenly, we cross-referenced project audit trails. Monica approved multiple contractor audits in which she herself was listed as internal counsel. That is a direct violation of our legal governance policy. You cannot sign off on your own reviews. Monica opened her mouth. Martin raised a hand. Enough. Let the silence settle like snow over the wreckage. Then he looked at the board. We clean house now, he said quietly, or we lose the investor. That's the choice. A beat passed. One of the directors, a longtime ally of Martin's and no fan of investor interference, shifted in his seat. We don't have much leverage left. And frankly, this looks worse the longer it festers. The chairwoman nodded, agreed. We either show control, or we're the next line in a press release titled Investor Withdraws from Chaotic Partnership. Monica stood. You can't fire me based on this circus. I've done nothing. Martin's voice cut across hers like a scalpel. You staged a termination in front of a strategic investor. You buried compliance violations under cosmetic audits. And you jeopardized 6 quarters of clean due diligence with your ego. He turned to security, who had quietly entered the room 2 minutes ago. Escort Miss Lang to HR. Her termination will be filed as for cause. Jeff rose too, sputtering. What about me? This wasn't all. Martin didn't even look at him. To be clear, you're not terminated. Yet, he looked to legal. Draft an internal suspension. Immediate, with system access revoked. Jeff blinked like someone had just unplugged his spine. Martin finally sat, folded his hands, and looked straight at me. File wasn't just about Monica and Jeff, he said. It was a referendum on how we ignored it, on how we treated truth when it was inconvenient. He glanced at the board. Let's make that mistake only once. No one disagreed. And for the first time in a long, long time, silence didn't feel like fear. It felt like clarity. Security didn't drag her out. That would have been too loud, too generous. Instead, Monica walked the long, silent hallway from the boardroom to HR with 2 men in black polos, flanking her like museum guards escorting out a forged Monet. She didn't cry, didn't scream, but every step she took was slower than the last, like her heels were trying to glue themselves to the marble, as if staying in the building for 10 more seconds could somehow rewind everything. It couldn't. At reception, her badge was scanned for the last time. Not rejected, just flagged. Little red warning box popped up on the monitor. The intern behind the desk didn't know what to do. Security did. They took it. She tried to speak, but no words came out. The monitor blinked once. Then read, access revoked, termination for cause. She sat down in the lobby, frozen, like the furniture might protect her from reality. Like anyone, would come running to say it was all a mistake. No one did, and just beyond the glass wall behind her, walked past, not slow, not smug, just deliberate, 1 foot in front of the other, the way you do when you've got a meeting to lead and a company to help rebuild. Jeff didn't get the same ceremony. His escort was quieter, 2 IT guys in polos and 1 compliance officer with a clipboard. His office door was locked by the time he came back from lunch. His name was already missing from the leadership Slack channel. When he tried to re-enter the finance floor, his badge didn't even beep. Just nothing, like he'd never existed. The investigator, external, neutral, clinical, shook my hand 30 minutes later. We'll take it from here, he said. I nodded and handed him the last file I'd been holding back, a list of names. Vendors, side deals, late-night approvals that someone still needed to answer for. I didn't watch Jeff leave. I didn't need to. My new badge had already been activated. VP, Operational Integrity. Got the call mid-afternoon. Martin didn't ask. He just said, it's done. The board voted. The role's yours. You now have sign-off authority on all incoming strategic deals, including investor phase compliance. My first act, I reopened the diligence folder Clay's team had paused. The investor team sent flowers, then they sent lunch. Then they asked when we could talk about the next expansion phase. Clay himself dropped by. No speech. No toast. Just a simple, quiet handshake. I trust your signature more than your predecessor's entire chain of command, he said. I appreciate that, I replied. Then I walked the halls, glass offices full of people who used to glance through me like I was a placeholder in someone else's org chart. They didn't look through me now. Some nodded, some smiled, most just stepped aside. Respect isn't loud. It just clears a path. I made it to Martin's office at sunset. The skyline glowed like the end of a very long war. He was already waiting with 2 glasses of water. No champagne, no drama, just quiet acknowledgement. He handed me one. You ready for your board seat next quarter? He asked. I didn't blink, didn't laugh, just looked him in the eye. Let's start with dinner, I said. The investor wants to talk roadmap. And we clinked glasses, not to toast. To reset the entire damn legacy. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.